The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure of metal and light that housed representatives from 12 different worlds. Inside, hundreds of beings sat in circular rows, their forms varying from humanoid to insectoid, to creatures made of pure energy. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of languages into coherent speech. Commander Gi-wan stood in the center of the chamber, her blue uniform marking her as a representative of Earth. She kept her back straight and her face calm, though her heart pounded in her chest. Behind her stood Lieutenant Minho, a young officer with sharp eyes, who carried a datapad filled with evidence. Dr. Higgy, a scientist with gray streaks in her black hair, stood beside him with her hands clasped tightly together. They were alone. 3 humans against an entire galaxy that wanted them condemned. The High Arbiter, a being named Velius, whose body resembled living crystal, raised one glowing hand. The chamber fell silent. His voice echoed through the space without need for speakers, resonating in a way that made everyone listen. "The Council recognizes the charges," Velius said. "Humanity stands accused of destroying the Viridian Archive. This crime is among the worst known to galactic law. 10,000 years of history, gone in an explosion. Knowledge from 100 civilizations, lost forever." A murmur rippled through the assembled aliens. Some made sounds of anger. Others simply stared at the 3 humans with what might have been hatred or disgust. Guan felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her shoulders. Lord Kelthor rose from his seat. The Viridian ambassador was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between purple and blue depending on the light. His large eyes fixed on Guan with obvious contempt. "We have evidence," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Security recordings show a human vessel near the archive moments before the explosion. Energy signatures match human plasma weapons. My own security chief witnessed human researchers attempting to access restricted areas just 3 days before this tragedy." Kelthor pressed a control on his wrist, and holographic images appeared in the air above the chamber floor. The first showed a ship with Earth markings hovering near an enormous orbital station. The second showed energy readings, lines of data that meant nothing to most observers, but everything to those who understood weapons technology. The third showed timestamps and security logs. "The human ship Explorer 7 was there," Kelthar continued. "We denied their request to access certain historical records. Ancient documents about the founding of our civilization, records that were our cultural heritage. 3 days later, the entire archive exploded. All evidence points to humanity." More murmurs filled the chamber. An insectoid representative clicked its mandibles together in what Jiwan had learned was a sign of agreement. A floating jellyfish-like creature pulsed with red light, indicating anger in its species. Guan stepped forward. "We request time to present our defense," she said clearly. Her voice did not shake. "Defense?" Kelthor laughed, a sound like wind through hollow reeds. "What defense can there be against such evidence? Your ship was there. Your weapon's signature matches the explosion. You had motive after we refused your intrusion into our private records." "We had no motive," Jiwan replied. "We were studying progenitor texts that were publicly available. We never asked for access to Viridian private documents." Lies, Kelthor hissed. "I have the request forms myself." Minho touched Jiwan's arm and whispered urgently. She glanced at him and saw something in his eyes, a flash of realization. But this was not the time. She turned back to face Velius. "High Arbiter, we invoke our right to proper investigation," Jiwan said. "Under galactic law, we have the right to examine all evidence and present counter-evidence." Velius's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly, what might have been a sigh in his species. "The evidence is clear, Commander. However, law is law. You have 3 standard days to present your defense. After that, judgment will be passed." "And what is the judgment?" Dr. Hieji asked quietly. Velius turned his faceted head toward her. "If humanity's found guilty, Earth will be quarantined from galactic society for 3 generations. No trade, no travel, no communication. Your world will be isolated and alone. As for you 3 and the crew of Explorer 7, you will face memory erasure." Everything you are will be stripped away and replaced with basic function protocols. You will live, but you will not be yourselves. The words hit like physical blows. Memory erasure was considered worse than death by most civilizations. To lose everything that made a person who they were, to become an empty shell, was a fate that made warriors tremble. Giwan felt her hands curl into fists, but she kept her voice level. 3 days is not enough time for proper investigation. 3 days is generous, Kelther said smugly. The evidence speaks for itself. Then we invoke Protocol 7, Juan said suddenly. The chamber went absolutely silent. Even the constant hum of translation devices seemed to pause. Velius leaned forward, his crystalline body refracting light in sharp angles. Protocol 7 has not been invoked in 2,000 years, he said slowly. You understand what you are requesting? I do, Giwan replied. When the guilt of an entire species hangs in the balance, when evidence may be in dispute, the accused may call for the witness stone, an artifact of the progenitors that reveals absolute truth. Kelther's skin flashed bright red. This is absurd. A desperate move by criminals. But Velius raised his hand again, commanding silence. He stared at Giwan for a long moment, and she met his gaze without flinching. Finally, he spoke. Protocol 7 is ancient law, written by the founding civilizations. If Commander Giwan requests the witness stone, we must honor that request. However, be warned, the witness stone does not simply verify facts. It reads the essence of truth itself. It will examine not just evidence, but souls. If humanity is guilty, the stone will know, and its judgment is final. There is no appeal. We accept these terms, Juan said. Kelther started to protest, but Velius cut him off. The request is valid. Send word to Sanctus. Bring the witness stone. As the council began to murmur again, Minho leaned close to Jiwan. I found something in the security footage, he whispered. A glitch in the timestamp. Someone altered these recordings. Giwan nodded slightly, but did not reply. Her gamble had bought them time, but she knew the risk. If the witness stone proved humanity guilty, there would be no second chances. Everything depended on what the ancient artifact would reveal. She looked up at the stars, visible through the chamber's transparent dome, thinking of Earth and all the people who would suffer if she failed. Then she straightened her shoulders and prepared for the battle ahead. The truth would come out. It had to. The next morning, the council chamber felt different. Word had spread about the invocation of Protocol 7, and beings from dozens of worlds packed the viewing galleries. Some came out of curiosity. Others came to witness what they believed would be humanity's final humiliation. Giwan had not slept. She had spent the night in the small quarters assigned to the human delegation, reviewing every piece of data they had. Minho worked beside her, his fingers flying across his data pad as he analyzed the security footage frame by frame. Dr. Hiyaji researched everything she could find about the witness stone and the progenitors. Who had created it? There, Minho said suddenly, pointing at his screen. Look at this timestamp. It shows 14 hours, 47 minutes, and 23 seconds. But watch what happens in the next frame.
Ow.
Guan leaned closer. The timestamp jumped to 14 hours, 47 minutes, and 31 seconds, skipping 8 seconds. That is not possible with standard security systems, she said. Exactly, Minho replied. Someone edited this footage. They removed 8 seconds. The question is, what happened in those 8 seconds? Dr. Hugie looked up from her own research. The witness stone was created by the progenitors, the first civilization to achieve faster-than-light travel. They disappeared thousands of years ago, but they left artifacts scattered across the galaxy. The witness stone is the most sacred. According to legend, it cannot be fooled or corrupted. It reads, pure truth. Legends can be exaggerated, Guan said quietly. Perhaps, Hyoji admitted, but we have no choice now. We invoked Protocol 7. We must face whatever comes. A chime sounded, indicating they were summoned back to the council chamber. Giwan straightened her uniform and led the way. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Every seat was filled, and beings stood in the aisles and floated near the ceiling. The air crackled with anticipation. Velius sat in his high seat, his crystalline form catching and throwing light in all directions. "The witness stone has arrived," he announced. 2 guards entered, carrying between them a container made of a material that seemed to absorb light. They placed it carefully on a pedestal in the center of the chamber, then stepped back. Velius gestured, and the container opened. Inside was a sphere roughly the size of a human head. It appeared to be made of crystal, but the surface moved like liquid. Colors swirled within it, patterns that hurt to look at directly. Strange symbols covered its surface, writing from languages dead for millennia. The sphere floated up out of the container on its own, hovering above the pedestal. A low humming sound filled the chamber, felt more than heard. It resonated in Giwan's chest, in her bones. "The witness stone has not been activated in over 2,000 years, Velius said. "The last time was to resolve a war between the Kyrix and Dranic peoples. It revealed truths that ended the conflict but shamed both sides. Are you certain you wish to proceed, Commander Giwan?" Before Giwan could answer, Kelthor stood. "I object to this entire proceeding. The evidence is clear. We do not need ancient superstitions to prove what we already know." "Your objection is noted and overruled," Velius said flatly. Protocol 7 was properly invoked. "The law is clear." "But the stone may not even function," Kelthor protested. His skin had gone pale, almost white. "It has not been used in ages. For all we know, it is simply a relic with no power." "There is one way to find out," Velius replied. He turned to Giwan. "Approach the stone, Commander." Giwan walked forward slowly. Every eye in the chamber followed her. The humming grew louder as she got closer to the floating sphere. When she was an arm's length away, she stopped. "Place your hand on the stone," Velius instructed. Giwan reached out. Her hand trembled slightly and she willed it to be still. The moment her fingers touched the sphere's surface, everything changed. Light exploded from the stone, filling the entire chamber with blinding brilliance. Giwan gasped as she felt something enter her mind, her memories, her very soul. It was not painful, but it was overwhelming. Every moment of her life seemed to flash before her eyes. Every choice, every thought, every emotion laid bare. The light began to coalesce into images. Holographic projections formed in the air above the chamber floor, visible to everyone. They showed Giwan's memories, but not from her perspective. The stone was reconstructing events from an objective viewpoint. The first image showed Explorer 7, the human research ship conducting routine surveys near the Viridian Archive. The crew was calm, professional. They were taking readings and making notes, nothing more. There was no preparation for an attack, no weapons charging, no suspicious activity. The second image showed the same scene, but from a different angle. A second ship appeared, one that had not been visible in the security footage Kelthor had presented. This ship had no markings, but its whole design was clearly Viridian. It was using a cloaking field that bent light around it, making it nearly invisible. Gasps and shouts filled the chamber. Kelthor's face went from pale to deep purple. "This is a trick," he shouted. "Some human technology interfering with the stone." But the images continued. The cloaked Viridian ship moved closer to the archive. Weapons ports opened along its hull. The energy signature building in those weapons was deliberately modified to match human plasma technology. The stone showed what happened next with brutal clarity. The Viridian ship fired. Multiple beams struck the archive, and explosions bloomed across its surface. Sections of the massive station broke apart, spinning off into space. Then the Viridian ship activated its faster-than-light drive and vanished. The final image showed the bridge of that ship. A Viridian officer sat in the command chair, his face clearly visible. His name appeared in glowing letters below his image. Translated into every language in the chamber, Commander Talric. Second officer of the Viridian Defense Fleet. The light from the stone faded, and Giwan pulled her hand back. She felt dizzy, exhausted from having her entire being examined. Minho caught her arm, steadying her. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. The Curix delegate, who had been most vocal against humanity, stood and bowed toward Ji-Wan in a gesture of apology. Others demanded explanations. Velius raised both hands, and slowly the noise died down. His crystalline face turned toward Kelthor, who stood frozen in place. "Lord Kelthor," Velius said, his voice cold, "you presented false evidence to this council. The witness stone has shown the truth. A Viridian military vessel destroyed the archive and framed humanity for the crime. Explain yourself." Kelthor's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Finally, he said, "I knew nothing of this. Talric acted without authorization. This is his crime, not mine." Dr. Hughie stepped forward. "That is a lie," she said clearly, "and I can prove it." She activated her own datapad, and new images appeared in the air. "I have been studying the archive's access logs for the past 6 months. Someone has been systematically altering historical records stored there. Records about Viridian history, specifically about a war 500 years ago. A war where the Viridians committed genocide against a neighboring species." More gasps filled the chamber. Hughie continued, "Human researchers discovered these alterations by accident while studying progenitor texts. We found references to events that did not match the official Viridian records. We requested access to the original documents to verify the discrepancy. That request was denied." "You have no proof," Kelthor said weakly. "The witness stone has more to show," Velius said. His faceted eyes seemed to bore into Kelthor. "The stone does not only show events. It shows intent. It reveals conspiracy." The stone pulsed again, and new images formed. These showed private communications between Kelthor and Talric, planning the destruction of the archive. They showed bribes paid to alter security systems. They showed the manufactured evidence against humanity. Kelthor collapsed into his seat. His skin had gone completely white. Around him, other Viridian delegates backed away. Distancing themselves from his disgrace, Velius stood, and the entire chamber fell silent. "The witness stone has spoken. Humanity is innocent. The Viridian government will answer for this crime." But the stone was not finished. It began to pulse with a different rhythm, a pattern that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The humming grew stronger, and the sphere floated toward Ji-Wan once more. She watched it approach. It's uncertain what would happen next. When it stopped in front of her, symbols on its surface began to glow with golden light. The symbols on the witness stone burned brighter, and suddenly everyone in the chamber understood them. It was not translation, not exactly. The meaning simply appeared in their minds, clear and undeniable. The stone was not just revealing what happened, it was revealing why. And it was showing them something much older and more important than one conspiracy. New images formed in the air. But these were different from before. They showed ancient times, civilizations that had risen and fallen before most current species had even evolved. They showed the progenitors, beings of incredible power and knowledge who had first mapped the stars. The progenitors had not disappeared. The images revealed. They had evolved, transcended physical form, and moved beyond what lesser beings could understand. But before they left, they had created safeguards. They had built artifacts and hidden them across the galaxy. Tools designed to protect certain principles they held sacred. Truth was chief among them. The witness. Stone showed its own creation, forged in stellar fire and imbued with purpose. It was not just a lie detector or a recorder of events. It was something far more profound. It was designed to find those worthy of carrying forward the progenitor's mission. It was designed to identify guardians. The images shifted to show other species throughout history. Some had been tested and found worthy. They had become guardians, protectors of truth and justice, wielders of ancient knowledge. Other species had failed their tests, consumed by ambition or corrupted by power. Those civilizations had fallen, their names forgotten. Humanity was being tested now. Ji-Wan felt the stone's attention focus on her again. This time it was different. It was not examining her past, but her present, her choices, her character. The false accusation, she realized, had been more than just a crime. It had been a trial. How would humanity respond to injustice? Would they accept the judgment of the powerful, even when that judgment was wrong? Would they fight with weapons and violence? Or would they stand firm and demand truth regardless of the cost? Gyuwan's invocation of Protocol 7 had been the answer the stone was waiting for. Humanity had chosen truth over expedience. They had chosen to face absolute scrutiny rather than accept convenient lies. The stone pulsed once more, and a beam of pure light shot from its surface to Gyuwan's hand. She gasped as warmth spread through her palm, up her arm, through her entire body. When the light faded, a mark remained on her hand. It was the same symbol that had glowed on the stone's surface, now etched into her skin in luminescent lines. "You bear the mark of guardians," Velius said softly. There was awe in his voice. "I have read of such things in the oldest texts, but I never thought to see it with my own eyes." Gyuwan looked at the mark on her palm. It glowed faintly, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. "What does this mean?" she asked. The stone answered, not in words but in pure understanding that flooded her mind. The mark designated humanity as inheritors of the progenitor's legacy. It granted access to other artifacts hidden throughout the galaxy. It gave humanity the responsibility to protect truth and oppose deception wherever it appeared. It also marked them as targets. "Not all species will welcome this development," Dr. Hayaji said quietly. She had clearly received the same understanding from the stone. "Some will see humanity as a threat, and they would be right to do so," Minho added. He stood straighter, and Gyuwan saw that he had changed somehow. During the stone's revelation, he had been standing closest to the artifact after Gyuwan herself. His eyes held a distant look, as if he was seeing things beyond the chamber. "The stone showed me something. Other guardian species, scattered across time and space. Some still exist. We are not alone in this. But many failed," Hiaji said. "The stone showed me that too. The burden is immense. Entire civilizations have collapsed under the weight of being guardians." Velius stood and spread his crystalline arms wide. His voice echoed through the chamber. "The witness stone has spoken. It has judged humanity worthy. From this day forward, Earth and its people are recognized as guardians of truth, inheritors of the progenitor's sacred mission." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, representatives began to stand. Some bowed or made gestures of respect according to their species' customs. Others remained seated, their expressions unreadable. The Kyrix delegate approached Gyuwan directly. Its insectoid form clicked and chittered before its translator caught up. "I spoke against your species, Commander. I was wrong. I apologize publicly and completely. My people will support humanity in this new role." "Thank you," Gyuwan said simply, but not everyone was supportive. A reptilian Dranic representative hissed loudly. "This changes nothing. One species should not hold such power. The progenitors are dead. Their laws are ancient. We should not be bound by the past." "The progenitor's laws are the foundation of galactic civilization," Velius replied sharply. "Without them, we would still be savages fighting over scraps. You will respect the stone's judgment, or you will leave this council." The Dranic representative settled back into its seat, but its eyes remained fixed on Gyuwan with obvious hostility. Kelthor had not moved from his seat. He sat slumped, his skin still pale. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I acted to protect my people's reputation. The archive contained evidence of ancient crimes. If that knowledge became public, the Viridians would be dishonored forever." "So you committed new crimes to hide old ones," Gyuwan said. She felt no satisfaction, only sadness. "You destroyed 10,000 years of history. You tried to condemn an entire species, all to protect your pride." "My civilization's pride?" Kelthor corrected weakly. "I did it for them." "No," Dr. Hiji said firmly. "You did it for yourself. The Viridian people deserve to know their true history, no matter how painful. That is what truth means." Velius gestured, and guards moved forward. "Lord Kelthar, You are removed from your position as ambassador. You will be held for trial. Commander Talric will be located and brought to justice. The Viridian government will be placed under council oversight until this matter is resolved. As the guards led Kelthur away, he looked back at Jiwan one last time. You think you have one, he said, but being a guardian will destroy you. The responsibility is too great. The enemies are too many. You will fail, just as others have failed before you. Jiwan did not reply. She watched him disappear through the chamber doors, then turned back to face the council. Velius addressed the assembly. This session will adjourn for 3 days. We must discuss what humanity's new status means for galactic politics. When we reconvene, decisions will be made about future protocols and responsibilities. As representatives began to file out, Minho moved closer to Jiwan. That glitch I found in the security footage, he said. Those 8 missing seconds? The stone showed what happened during that time. Talric's ship decloaked briefly. That is when the real security system captured it. But Kelthur's people edited that part out. We would have found the truth eventually, Jiwan said. But the stone showed it faster and more clearly than we ever could have. The stone did more than that, Hyoji said. She had been studying her datapad, reviewing the information the artifact had revealed. It gave us access to its database. I have coordinates now. Locations of 6 other progenitor sites across the galaxy.
6 more artifacts,
Minho asked. 6 more pieces of the puzzle? Hyogi replied. The progenitors left behind technology and knowledge meant for the Guardians. We need to find these sites before others do. Guan looked at the mark on her hand again. It still glowed softly, a constant reminder of what had happened. This is bigger than one conspiracy, she said. The stone showed us that much. There are patterns we have not seen yet. Threats we do not understand. The witness stone had returned to its pedestal, but it still pulsed with faint light. Giwan approached it once more. When she got close, she felt that connection again. That sense of vast knowledge and purpose. Thank you, she said quietly. Not sure if the stone could hear or understand gratitude. The stone pulsed brighter for just a moment. And Jiwan smiled. They had won this battle. Humanity was vindicated, recognized, and elevated to a position of honor. But she knew, deep in her heart, that this was just the beginning. The real challenges lay ahead. As guardian of truth, she would face them all. 3 days passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Giwan barely slept, spending her time speaking with various representatives who wanted to understand what humanity's new role meant. Some were genuinely curious and supportive. Others were suspicious or openly hostile. She answered their questions with patience. Though her exhaustion grew with each passing hour, Minho threw himself into planning an expedition to the progenitor sites. The coordinates the witness stone had provided were scattered across the galaxy, each one in a different sector of space. Some were near inhabited systems. Others were in regions where no ship had traveled in centuries. He compiled lists of equipment needed, crew requirements, and potential dangers. Dr. Hyoji worked on something even more important. The witness stone had given her access to tools for restoring the damaged archive. She spent hours each day in a small workstation carefully reconstructing deleted files and unmasking altered records. What she found disturbed her deeply. On the morning of the 4th day, the council reconvened. The chamber was packed again, but this time the atmosphere was different. The shock of the previous session had faded, replaced by careful consideration and political maneuvering. Representatives whispered to each other, forming alliances and strategies. Velius called the session to order. We are here to discuss the implications of humanity's recognition as guardians, he said. Commander Giwan has been offered a permanent position as Earth's representative to this council, with expanded authority to act in matters concerning truth and justice. Do you accept this position, Commander? Jiwan stood. She had thought long and hard about this decision. Accepting meant leaving behind her old life, taking on burdens she could barely comprehend. But refusing felt like cowardice, and that was something she could not live with. I accept, she said clearly. Murmurs ran through the chamber, some approving, others doubtful. Velius nodded. Then it is done. Commander Giwan of Earth is now recognized as a guardian of truth, with all rights and responsibilities that title carries. A young Viridian stood from the back rows. He was smaller than most of his species, with skin that showed green undertones. "My name is Kiris," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I am a junior diplomat from the Viridian delegation. I wish to speak." Velius gestured for him to continue. Kiris took a deep breath. What Lord Kelthor did brings shame to all Viridians. He acted from pride and fear, and his actions have damaged our reputation perhaps beyond repair. But there are many of us who believe that confronting our true history, no matter how painful, is the only path forward. We ask Commander Giwan and the Council for guidance in this process. We want to make amends. The sincerity in his voice was clear. Giwan felt something shift in her chest. This was what being a guardian meant. Not just revealing truth, but helping others learn to embrace it. "Your willingness to face difficult truths honors your people," Giwan said. "The Viridians are not defined by the crimes of the past or the mistakes of your leaders. You are defined by how you respond to these revelations. I will help in any way I can." Kiris bowed deeply. "Thank you, Guardian." The title felt strange on her ears. Guardian. She was still getting used to it. Dr. Hyoji stood next. "I have findings to share from my work on the archive restoration." She activated her datapad, and images appeared in the air. "The Witness Stone gave me tools to recover deleted and altered files. What I have found is disturbing. The Viridians were not the only ones altering historical records." A wave of unease passed through the chamber. Representatives exchanged nervous glances. Over the past 500 years, Hyugi continued. At least 17 different civilizations have made unauthorized changes to archive data. Some alterations were minor, adjusting dates or details to make their histories seem more glorious. Others were major, deleting entire events or fabricating false records. Nearly every major civilization represented in this council has, at some point, tried to rewrite its own history. No one wanted to admit to such things publicly. "I am not sharing this information to shame anyone," Hyuji said quickly. "I am sharing it because we must acknowledge what has happened before we can move forward. The archive was meant to be a shared resource, a place where truth was preserved for all species. Instead, it became a tool for propaganda and deception." The Kirix delegate stood, its translator crackling. "My people have committed such alterations. I do not deny it. We changed records of a war from 300 years ago, making ourselves appear as victims when we were actually the aggressors. I am ashamed to admit this publicly." The admission was like a dam breaking. Other representatives began to stand, confessing their civilization's alterations. Some spoke with shame, others with defiance, but slowly the truth emerged. The archive had been corrupted for centuries, and almost everyone was complicit. Velius let the confessions continue for a while, then raised his hand for silence. "This is the price of deception," he said. "When we lie about our past, we poison our future." "Dr. Heiji, can the archive be fully restored?" "With time and the tools the Witness Stone provided, yes," Heiji replied. "But it will take years, perhaps decades. And the restored version will reveal many uncomfortable truths." "Then that is what we must do," Velius declared. "Truth cannot be selective. We either embrace it fully, or we embrace nothing at all." Minho stood next. "I have prepared an expedition to locate the other progenitor sites the Witness Stone revealed. These sites contain artifacts and knowledge meant for the Guardians. With the Council's permission, I request resources and support for this mission." "What kind of artifacts?" asked the Draenac representative, suspicion clear in its voice. "I do not know specifically," Minho admitted. "But the Witness Stone indicated they contained technology and information that could benefit all species. If used properly, or weapons that could threaten us all. If misused," the Draenac countered. "That is why Guardians exist," Giwan said firmly. "To ensure such things are not misused. We do not seek power over others. We seek to protect truth and prevent the kind of deception that nearly destroyed the archive and falsely condemned my people." Debate erupted, but eventually a vote was called. The council approved Minho's expedition by a narrow margin. He would leave within a week, taking a small crew to the nearest progenitor site. As the session continued, Guan felt the weight of her new role settling more firmly on her shoulders. Every decision would be scrutinized. Every action would be judged. But she also felt something else: purpose. For the first time in her career, she knew exactly what she was meant to do. When the session finally ended, Kairos approached her again. "Guardian Juan, may I speak with you privately?" They found a quiet corner of the station's observation deck. Through the transparent walls, stars stretched endlessly in all directions. "I want to help with the archive restoration," Kira said. "Dr. Heiji will need assistance, and I believe Viridians should be part of the process of revealing our own true history." "That would be valuable," Juan agreed. "But it will not be easy. You will uncover things your people would prefer to keep hidden." "I know," Kira said, "but hiding the truth is what led to this disaster. My generation wants to do better. We want to build a civilization based on honesty, not comfortable lies." Jiwan smiled. "Then you are already halfway to understanding what it means to be a guardian, even without the mark." Kiris looked at the symbol on her hand, which still glowed faintly. "Does it hurt?" "No," Jiwan said, "but it is a constant reminder. Every time I look at it, I remember what I am responsible for. That weight is heavier than any physical pain." Later that evening, Jiwan met with Minho and Heiji in their quarters. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. "I saw something when the witness stone was active," Minho said finally. "A vision, or maybe a memory from the stone itself. The progenitors faced an enemy, something that fed on lies and deception that corrupted civilizations from within. They called them the Void Shepherds." Hiaji looked up sharply. "I found references to something similar in the recovered archive files. Mentions of a threat that moves between civilizations, never showing itself directly, but always spreading chaos." "Do you think they are still out there?" Quan asked. "The witness stones seem to think so," Minho replied. "That is why the progenitors created the Guardians. Not just to protect truth for its own sake, but to defend against something that uses lies as a weapon." The three of them sat in silence again, contemplating this new revelation. The conspiracy they had just exposed suddenly seemed small, compared to what might be waiting in the darkness. "One step at a time," Jawan said finally. "We find the other progenitor sites. We restore the archive. We help civilizations learn to embrace their true histories. And we watch for signs of this enemy. And if we find them?" Heiji asked. G1 looked at the mark on her hand, feeling the weight and the purpose it represented. "Then we do what Guardians do. We stand for truth, no matter the cost." 6 months passed since humanity was declared innocent and recognized as Guardians. Those months brought changes that rippled across the entire galaxy. Giwan settled into her new role as Guardian representative. Her days were filled with meetings, mediations, and difficult decisions. Species brought their disputes to her, asking her to use the authority of her position to resolve conflicts. She did so carefully, always seeking truth first and judgment second. Some thanked her for her wisdom. Others resented her involvement. She accepted both reactions with equal calm. The mark on her hand had become famous across the galaxy. Children from a dozen worlds drew pictures of it. Scholars studied its meaning. Politicians debated what power it truly granted. Guan ignored most of this attention and focused on her work. Minho's expedition had reached the first progenitor site 3 months earlier. It was a derelict station orbiting a dead star, so old that cosmic dust had buried it completely. His team had spent weeks excavating, carefully removing millennia of debris. Inside, they found wonders. Technology that seemed to defy known physics. Computers that still functioned after 10,000 years. And most importantly, they found a message. The message was a warning. Minho stood on the bridge of his ship, reviewing the data they had recovered. The warning spoke of the Void Shepherds in detail. These entities were not physical beings, but something more abstract, more dangerous. They moved through civilizations like a disease, corrupting communication and trust. They turned allies into enemies through subtle lies and half-truths. They fed on conflict and chaos. The progenitors had fought them for centuries before finally transcending to a higher plane of existence. But the Void Shepherds remained, waiting in the dark spaces between stars. "The warning beacon has been transmitting for 10,000 years, Minho said to his crew, broadcasting continuously, trying to warn anyone who would listen. But no one has been here to receive it until now." His second officer, a human woman named Somin, studied the readouts. According to this data, the Void Shepherds operate by infiltrating communication networks. They alter messages slightly, just enough to cause misunderstandings. They spread rumors and plant false evidence. Over time, they tear apart entire civilizations from within. "Like what almost happened to us," Minho said quietly. "The false evidence against humanity. The altered archive records. What if the Viridian conspiracy was not just about pride? What if it was influenced by something darker?" The thought was chilling. If the Void Shepherds were real and active, then every conflict in the galaxy could be suspect. Every war, every betrayal, every conspiracy might have been shaped by unseen hands. Minho sent his findings back to the council immediately. Meanwhile, Dr. Hyagi continued her painstaking work on the archive restoration. Kiris worked beside her, his dedication absolute. Together, they had recovered approximately 40% of the deleted files. Each discovery was carefully documented and verified. The restored records painted a complex picture of galactic history. Wars that official records claimed were defensive had actually been wars of conquest. Species believed to be primitive had actually been quite advanced before being destroyed by their neighbors. Genocides had been committed and then erased from memory. Hyugi published her findings in regular reports to the council. Each report caused new waves of controversy and debate. Some civilizations accepted their dark pasts and began processes of reconciliation. Others denied the evidence, claiming the restored files were forgeries. But slowly, gradually, a new culture began to emerge. A culture that valued honesty over comfortable lies. A culture that understood truth was the foundation of justice. KYR has proved invaluable to this process. As a Viridian, he helped his people confront the genocide their ancestors had committed 500 years ago. It was painful work. Many Viridians resented him for bringing shame on their civilization. But others, especially younger Viridians, supported him completely. "My people are learning to grieve," Kiris told Hiji one day as they worked together. "We are grieving for the species we destroyed. We are grieving for the lies we believed. But grief is better than ignorance. At least now we can try to be better." Hyoji smiled sadly. "That is all anyone can do. Acknowledge the past and try to do better in the future." Back on Earth, humanity was transforming as well. News of the Guardian status had spread across the planet within hours of it being granted. The United Earth government established the Guardian Initiative, a program to train humans in the values and responsibilities of their new role. Thousands volunteered. They studied ethics, history, conflict resolution, and the technology the progenitors had left behind. The mark that Jiwan bore could be passed to others. Through a ceremony involving the witness stone, carefully selected candidates underwent rigorous testing before being granted the mark and the authority that came with it. But not everyone on Earth was happy about this development. Some politicians argued that being guardians made humanity a target. They wanted to refuse the honor and return to isolation. Others worried that the responsibility would change human culture in ways they could not predict. Protests erupted in some cities. Support rallies formed in others. Earth, like the galaxy itself, struggled with the weight of truth. G1 watched all of this from her position on the council station. She received daily reports from Earth, and each one reminded her of the burden she had accepted. But she never regretted her choice. One evening, she sat alone in her quarters reviewing yet another stack of reports. Her communication terminal chimed. It was Minho, calling from his expedition ship. "We found something else at the progenitor site," he said, without preamble. His face on the screen looked excited but also frightened. Evidence that the Void Shepherds are not just a historical threat. They are active now. They have been active for centuries. Giwan leaned forward. What kind of evidence? Communication logs from the progenitor station. They tracked patterns of deception across the galaxy. Wars that started from misunderstandings. Alliances that collapsed due to betrayals that never actually happened. The patterns are clear once you know what to look for. How many conflicts? Gi-1 asked. Dozens, Minho replied. Maybe hundreds, including the Viridian conspiracy. The initial decision to alter the archive records might have been Kelther's. But the way events escalated, the way the evidence was planted, the way we were framed so perfectly, that shows signs of external influence. Juan felt cold. So we were pawns in a larger game. Y'all were, Minho said. But here's the important part. The progenitors left instructions for fighting the Void Shepherds. The key is transparency. The more open and honest a civilization's communication, the harder it is for the Shepherds to corrupt it. That is why they created the Guardians. Not to rule or control, but to promote truth and prevent deception. So our role is not just about resolving conflicts, Juan said, understanding dawning. It is about preventing conflicts from being manufactured in the first place. Exactly, Minho agreed. I am continuing to the next progenitor site. Each one should have more information, more tools we can use. But Jiwan, we need to tell the council about this. They need to know what we are really facing. After the call ended, Jiwan sat in silence for a long time. The implications were staggering. How many wars had been unnecessary? How many civilizations had destroyed each other because of lies whispered by unseen enemies? She called an emergency council session for the next day. When the council convened, Guan presented Minho's findings. The chamber was silent as representatives absorbed the information. Then, predictably, chaos erupted. "This is paranoia," shouted the Dranhak representative. "You want us to believe invisible enemies are manipulating everything? This is just a way for humans to increase their power." But Velius raised his hand, commanding silence. "The evidence is compelling," he said. "And it explains many things that have puzzled historians for centuries. Commander Minho's analysis of communication patterns shows clear signs of systematic manipulation." "That is exactly the point," Guan said firmly. "We cannot trust blindly. We must verify. We must be transparent. We must build systems where truth is valued above comfort or convenience. That is how we fight the Void Shepherds." Slowly, reluctantly, the council began to accept the reality of the threat. A new initiative was proposed, the Truth Accord. It would require all member civilizations to maintain transparent historical records and establish independent verification systems for important communications. 53. Civilizations signed the Truth Accord in the first month. More followed as evidence of the Void Shepherd's influence became impossible to deny. 3 months later, Guan stood in a private chamber with Minho and Hayaji. They had not been together in the same room since the day of the trial. There was so much to discuss, but for a moment, they simply enjoyed each other's presence. "I am heading to the 4th progenitor site next week," Minho said. "Each site reveals more about how to fight the Shepherds. We are building a database of their tactics and patterns." "My work on the archive is nearly complete," Heiji added. "Once the final files are restored, we will have a complete, altered record of galactic history for the first time in centuries. It will be painful for many civilizations to confront, but necessary."